record session. Okay, and first up for a presentation, we have Rex. Would you like to go ahead?
Yep, I'll start sharing my screen. So my name is Rex Torres, and this summer I worked on the Sea Lamprey Passage project on the Penobscot River. So this is my mentor, Aaron Peterson. And so the central question of my project was, does the release site influence the sea lamprey's approach to the Milford Dam? So we tagged a bunch of sea lamprey and we released 50 at the east release site, so on the eastern side of the river, and 50 on the western side of the river below the dam. And so you may be asking, why is the migration of the sea lamprey important? Why is them passing the dam important? Well, that's because the carcasses, after they have passed and spawned, they die, and their carcasses provide valuable nutrients and for macroinvertebrates, and all those nutrients from the salt water end up in the fresh water. And also their nest building helps improve the shape of the riverbed and can even make it easier for other fish to make their reds. So in the life cycle here, the fish that I was tracking and monitoring was these after adulthood, after they've had their parasitic phase in the sea, their migration from April through June up to spawn up the river. So tagging. So I tagged 100 total lamprey, and over the course of 2 days, 50 released on the eastern side and 50 on the western side. Here's a video. So he's inserting the radio tag and the pit tag, two different types of tags, and the antenna is sticking out of the lamprey. And then the incision gets sutured up. But yeah. Then we started tracking them after releasing them, and this is the part of the project that I contributed most to. So I used radio telemetry to track these fish, to frequent schedule data collection, used 5 different radio wave frequencies to split all of the lamprey up so that one channel wasn't overcrowded. And it's important to mention that there was a pilot study last year where 50 lamprey were released on the eastern side, and passage was very efficient. And the hypothesis being that perhaps because the fish lift of the Milford Dam is on the same side, the eastern side of the dam as the fish were released, that may be why. So we released fish on the western side, and as you can see, the map, we'll see where they end up. And that was what my tracking work was. And all of these numbers are locations where I track the fish from. So the results. The results are yet to, they'll be published, but we're yet to have a lot of results. So right now we have a lot of data, and we're in the process of analyzing and finishing up strength mapping. So strength mapping is the process of, while I'm tracking these fish, my receiver reads a strength, and we have to find a way to get a distance from the receiver out of that strength. So that's what strength mapping is. And then these results are very relevant because if we find out that these fish on the western side of the river are not passing the dam or ending up where they're not supposed to be, then perhaps we can propose a method of passage on the western side of the dam. So here's an example of some strength mapping to help visualize. For example, these stars are receivers, and the yellow would indicate the highest strength reading on a receiver, and that's between 1 and 50 yards away from the receiver. And then it obviously, further away, it gets weaker. So why is the research important to local communities? So the Penobscot River supports tons of jobs, from people guiding and outdoor recreation and whatnot. And it also, our research overlaps with the interests of the Penobscot Indian nations in preserving their culture and traditions. So I had a moment of insight out there while mobile tracking for these fish. I saw tons of dead lamprey and shad as well. And I literally saw the nutrients from the salt water brought into the fresh water, and how it entered the food web and how it supported life on the Penobscot River. So looking forward, I'm excited to finish up the uploading all the mobile tracking data. There's literally tens of thousands of lines of it, so it's a lot of work. And I'm excited to finish up the strength mapping as well. And I'm looking forward to bringing these skills that I've learned back to Colby College and the biology program there. And yeah, I'm just so thankful to have been on all these dam sites and worked with such amazing graduate students. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Rex. And I've sent out, I hope all of you see in the chat that there is the link to be able to give feedback to Rex, and we'll be able to do questions and answers shortly. And next, Daniella.
Let me go ahead and share my screen. So we can see that, right?
Looks great.
Okay, perfect. So hi everyone, my name is Daniella Loera. I am doing my internship with USC Sea Grant, and I'm currently attending California State San Marcos in California, where I study environmental studies, business, and Spanish. I am president of the Environmental Stewards Association, which is an organization on campus that focuses on environmental issues. And I am also a volunteer with Surfrider Foundation San Diego. Marine debris on the beach is an important issue to me because I'm a regular beach goer, as well as an individual who is aware of the harm marine debris can cause on people, cities, marine species, and habitats. For my project, I decided to focus on conducting and analyzing beach cleanups in San Diego County, specifically Oceanside and Carlsbad beaches. By performing beach cleanups and recording the data, I analyzed my findings to get a better understanding of the pollution being found on these beaches. After analyzing my data, I have found that all beaches have some similarities, but also present different trends in the kind of trash that is found. And there are many different factors that can affect these trends, such as beach width, human impact, tide direction, city regulations, and many more. And all of these points are data points that have my data collection on them. Oceanside Harbor had trash that was more complete rather than broken down, like these right here. The most common items found in order were plastic food wrappers, plastic fragments, and foam fragments. I can infer that food wrappers is the most common at this beach because there are more events such as surf lessons and bigger gatherings that are hosted here. It's really common because the beach on Oceanside Harbor is a lot wider and it accumulates more trash rather than getting washed into the ocean by high tides throughout the day. In Oceanside Pier, it was a bit different. The common items found in order are cigarette butts, plastic fragments, and foam fragments. The plastic and foam fragments found were already broken down, most of which look like they came from foodware containers, and they kind of look like this one right here. At Carlsbad Beach, the most common items found in order are plastic fragments, foam fragments, and food wrappers. And most of these fragments were smaller than a dime and were mostly buried in the sand like these. And lastly, at North and South Ponto Carlsbad, the most common items found are foam fragments and plastic fragments. And both of these were also smaller debris. And throughout Carlsbad, I did notice that most of the debris was broken down and there were a lot more plastic utensils and foam foodware items. And this is probably more common here in Carlsbad rather than in Oceanside because of the lack of plastic regulation. When comparing Oceanside and Carlsbad in terms of plastic reduction ordinances, Oceanside has more into motion. Oceanside has been talking about adopting a resolution supporting the reduction of marine debris and litter, whereas Carlsbad has not set anything yet. And although Oceanside hasn't implemented mandatory reduction measures, their support and recommendations on voluntary efforts has seemed to help a little bit more than in Carlsbad. Since plastic and foam fragments are the biggest issues surrounding these beaches, it is important to keep the community and representatives engaged. Implementing plastic reduction ordinances in these cities can lower the amount of pollution found along these beaches, and ultimately the only way for this to happen is to present this issue to council members in the city. When doing my internship, my project helped me understand the needs of local communities to have access to clean beaches, as well as inform on environmental topics like pollution. Educating community members on this issue can help reduce pollution found on the beach, as well as inform them on where it is coming from and what they can do to help the issue at hand. Educating individuals on these topics can help them live a more sustainable, healthier lifestyle that can benefit the community as a whole. When doing my internship, I realized I really enjoyed doing research. I loved being able to go out and expand my knowledge on something I truly am passionate about, and realizing this has made me think of continuing school after I graduate to do more research on something I'm truly interested in. And since I am about only like halfway into my internship, I hope to do more work that involves getting community members involved in supporting plastic reduction ordinances, as well as inviting council members to beach cleanups and other events, and promoting education and engagement to community members in Oceanside and Carlsbad is something that I'll continue working on. And I'm hoping to write letters to council members in these cities and attend council meetings to bring more attention to plastic reduction resolutions. And lastly, I would like to thank my mentors, Mitch and Christina, and Linda and Maria from USC for guiding me throughout my internship. I have really enjoyed the process, and I will continue to. And so I hope you all enjoyed my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniella, and for sharing your work with us. Again, I want to remind people to go ahead and do the Qualtrics survey that's in the chat. It allows all of the presenters to get some feedback from all of you. And Daniella, if you want to stop sharing your screen, and we can have our next presenter, Alejandra. If you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Yes, I'll be sharing my screen now. Okay, you can see it, right?
Looks great, thank you.
Okay, so hello, my name is Alejandra Acevedo Muniz, and this summer I was working with Sea Grant Puerto Rico in an internship, and also with the Interdisciplinary Center of Coastal Studies from the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. So I am a biology student, and this August I'll be starting my junior year. And the title of my project was Changes in Weight of Big Game Trophy Species in Puerto Rico from 1950 to 1955. So when I first arrived at my internship, I was given approximately 200 weekly columns from an old newspaper. And these columns were titled Pescando en Puerto Rico, which translate to fishing in Puerto Rico. These columns were, the point of these columns was to provide information about how was the fishing status in the island, because Frank O'Brien, a famous business owner, brought his tackle factory to the island, so many tourists were very interested on how was the fishing situation in Puerto Rico. And at first, I knew very little information about fishing and species, and so I was a little bit stuck because I didn't know what to do with that amount of information. So the only thing I could do was read. So I read every column, I read multiple articles, and ton of books of information about fishing and how is the situation in Puerto Rico. And then I had my aha moment. So I decided to describe the weights of fishes and from those years. So the Department of Natural Resources in Puerto Rico only has data starting from the 1954 to the present. So I decided that if I extracted all the data concerning the weights and sizes of fishes, I would fill that gap. And I only decided to focus on three major billfish species, which are the blue marlins, the white marlins, and sailfish. So once I extracted all that data, I converted them into graphs, and I noticed that there was a slow and steady increase in weight, but a rapid increase in quantity. In the year 1951, only 14 billfishes were documented in the newspaper. But in 1954, a total of 90 billfishes were documented. So we could see that the sport in Puerto Rico was very much increasing and bringing even more tourists to the island. And even though it must seem like a good aspect, actually, it's not really all that positive, because now that we know about restrictions and regulations, we noticed that back then, fishermen weren't taking the environment into consideration, and they were catching species that weren't mature enough to be taken out of the water. Because in 1950s, the average weight of billfishes of blue marlins catched were on 187 pounds. And now with all the restrictions and regulations that NOAA fisheries have implemented, you can only catch blue marlins that weigh 317 pounds approximately. The other data that I extracted was data from fishing tournaments. So there were various fishing tournaments every year, but the most famous tournaments were the insular tournaments. And from 1951 to 1954, 6 tournaments of insular tournaments were documented. The third insular tournament wasn't, I don't have the number of registries from that tournament. And this is very valuable information because comparing the total registries with the total catches, we can see that every time more fishermen and more tourists were coming to the island. And this information proves that in just 5 years, fishing in Puerto Rico really grew. And it's very important to know this because $100 million of tourism from the island comes from only fishing tournaments. And this helps me realize that in every aspect in life, we should conserve the environment, because even though lots of people were fishing back then, blue marlins, white marlins, and sailfishes that were being caught weren't in the appropriate size. So now that fishing regulations are being implemented, we can conserve the environment and we can protect this important tourism activity from the island. And thanks for your attention. And I thank my mentors, Dr. Manuel Valdez Piscini and Sea Grant Puerto Rico, for this opportunity.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And the three of you have done an extraordinary job. I want to make sure we open up if anyone has questions for any of our presenters. And also to remind folks to please fill out the survey to give people information as well. Any questions for our presenters?
I had a question for Alejandra.
Please.
Yes.
So what can Puerto Rico do to help? Is there any regulations or policies that are helping, or is it more of what can we do as individuals, probably promoting what is happening, or trying to get people to know?
Well, as of now, concerning sailfishes and billfishes, NOAA Fisheries has they have implemented regulations. So you can't fish white marlins that are longer than 66 inches. For blue marlins, it's 99 inches. So fishermen can take up on that. But it is known that there has been people that are fishing some species that are smaller than this. So the best that we can do is just promote it even more and just highlight the importance of not fishing like outside of the regulations.
Thank you.
Do we have other questions?
I have one for Alejandra as well. Just maybe because you were the last one that presented, so it's fresh in my mind. But you mentioned that fishing was one of the main economical contributors for Puerto Rico. Is that still the case, or is it just general tourism? Or were you able to compare the numbers in terms of, or have a comparison of what it was before and how much of it was contributing to the economy in Puerto Rico?
Well, comparing it to the 1950s, which is the year that I was focused on, right now it's bigger. Like the importance of fishing is like it's greater now because the $100 million importance of the tourism attraction is a data that I found from 2017. So it's pretty accurate. So it's pretty recent. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank
It was very fascinating.
And Rex, I have a question for you. Are there management strategies that are in place to help ensure the survival of the sea lamprey with the benefits it provides?
Yeah, so the Penobscot River Restoration Project. So as of pretty recently, the Great Works and the VZ Dam were removed to allow these fish to reach further habitat, further upstream and spawn. And then also at Milford, there's a fish lift that I was talking about on the east side. So that enables them even more ability to get further upstream. But and also even further upstream from that, there's a nature-like bypass at the Howland Dam that they can possibly reach even more habitat. But the question is whether or not these fish are able to find these fish passages and successfully cross and reach their spawning habitat. So yeah.
Very cool. So that really evaluating with your tracking, being able to see if they're using those lifts and being able to get through, and that's really cool. Thank you. Other questions? Danielle, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I have a question for Daniela. So with you kind of previewed maybe writing to some important people and inviting some people down to your beach cleanups. Do you anticipate some good response from that, or how is the community have they gotten excited about a lot of the work you're doing and been receptive?
Yeah, so usually when I've written to council members before, because I had another internship with Oceana, and they do a lot of things like that. And I have done it before. So what we have to do beforehand is do research on each council member and see what their views are and see if they're going to be open to it or not. So it's really just a lot of looking at what they have done already and see if they would probably be open to the idea. But usually in Carlsbad and Oceanside, there's more people in these like councils that are more open to the idea, since San Diego is very environmental, and San Diego already has a ordinance they want to put in place for the whole county. So usually they're more open about it. So I'm hoping that they are, and I am trying to do research right now, and that's going to be the end of my internship, is doing more research on each council member and writing individual letters so that they're more open to it, and hopefully they do. they do want to participate in beach cleanups. And it does make them look better as council members because they're more, they're more inviting to other people in the community to do it as well. And they're seen in a better light by everybody in the city.
Great suggestion. It looks like you've got a comment in the chat as well, Daniela. Any other questions or suggestions to any of our presenters so far? Okay, then we can go ahead on with Camila and Rafael. If you'd like to share your screen. Okay, we can see it well.
Okay. In Puerto Rico, every time we visit the West Coast, especially in the area of Cabo Rojo, which has been distinguished for their rich culinary arts, we expect our food to be from local fisheries, and most times it isn't. Instead, we face comments like it's not available, the fishermen aren't going out as much, or there's not enough local production to meet demand. It makes it sound like it's the fishing community's fault. Is it entirely their responsibility? Is this a socioeconomic and environmental issue worth studying? These and other questions were answered in our research, Effects of Global Warming and Economic Resilience in the Commercial Fishing Sectors in the West Coast of Puerto Rico.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to say we have our cameras turned off because the internet signal here in Puerto Rico right now is very poor, at least in our municipality. But I am Rafael Figueroa, and with Camila Rivera, we are undergraduate students of the Departments of Economics and Sociology, respectively, at the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez campus. We were both selected to participate in the community engaged internship offered by the Puerto Rico Sea Grant program this summer. As mentioned earlier, we carried out a research study this summer to analyze the impact of global warming and economic resilience in the coastal communities in the West Coast of Puerto Rico. Our research that focused on fishermen, restaurant owners, and fisheries managers from the counties of Cabo Rojo and Mayagüez help expand our understanding on the impact global warming has in coastal communities and how these communities cope or overcome it with resilience, even when it seems to affect their economy. Working with these communities gave us their perspective on global warming and helped us see that they are not grasping the complexity of the effects of global warming due to the lack of education on the subject. For example, in the interviews, we noticed that most of them couldn't tie the effects of global warming to the reality, given the fact that they tend to only associate it with heat and glaciers. The experience was gratifying, the opportunity to understand their everyday life, their purpose, but mostly their passion for the art of fishing.
Knowledge was everywhere. We were absorbing facts every minute. But the two moments that made us go, Eureka, were first, when the fishermen mentioned that they've noticed an increase in sargassum and how it affects their fishing grounds depending on the arts of fishing they use. From divers to recreational fishermen, the increasing effect was clear. Second, prolonged rains took us by surprise. I used to think that the bad weather led to big fish because of oxygen increase in the water, but instead I learned that we have 3 river mouths that bring trash, trees, branches, and sediment into the sea, things that clearly affect every form of fishing. And one moment that actually led us to an was when we saw different community behaviors. For example, some tend to work and support one another, while other communities practice the each man to its own method.
Looking to the future, we decided to set both long and short terms for goals for the research. In the short term, our goal is to generate and publish an article outlining both the findings of the summer study and suggestions for possible public policy with respect to these coastal communities, in particular, the fishermen community, and the impact of global warming in these communities.
As for the long term, we will add the county of Rincon, Puerto Rico to an ongoing research that pretends to analyze the resilience and economic vulnerability of the fishing communities in the western area of Puerto Rico, after various events like the COVID-19 and the hurricanes. Rincon hasn't been affected only by hurricanes, coastal erosion, and sea levels, which have destroyed their local fishery. It also suffers from the social phenomena of gentrification and marginalized communities. This will set a rough tone to a phase that will introduce a new level of economic resilience and understanding of global warming.
I think Camila is having problems with the internet when showing the presentation, but we want to thank Puerto Rico Sea Grant, our mentor, Dr. Edwin Asensio, for the opportunity, and we hope that the findings of this study can help these communities to overcome in the future the impacts of global warming. Now we are open to answer every question you have. I hope my internet doesn't get messy. I hope to have the camera on the most time I can. So thank you very much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. And we have one more person listed, but I don't know if that person's here. And if not, we're going to come back to you with questions because I know I have some. By chance, Hunter, are you here? I don't see you. Yes? No, okay. Well, then let's come back to our last presenters with questions because what a fabulous presentation. Who has questions for Camila and Rafael? I do. I'm going to start and then other people can be able to go. I was so surprised when you talked about, again, that the fish that people commonly think about and want aren't there. And I think that, and thinking about local fish being available, it's an issue I think we're facing in many places, including in California. That oftentimes it's fish from other places that are brought in and sold in restaurants instead of the locally caught fish. It's really exciting to hear how you dove more deeply and to look at it and to look at the impacts in the relationships. Is sargassum something, were you able to see, is there a pattern over time, or is it something that you see consistently or is it something you see just suddenly because of climate change?
There used to be a pattern, but now we can see it more often. And 95% of the fishermen answered that it has affected their fishing grounds.
Yes, most of the fishermen say that the sargassum affects them because it doesn't, how I say, it doesn't help them to get started the motors, because the sargassum tends to get around the boat and they need to change the area of fishing because of the sargassum, because the sargassum also affects the visibility, affects the quality and the quantity of the fish. And also it has some animals that some of the fishermen prefer to stay away. So most of them, when we talk to them about sargassum, they really state them as a great problem. And it's one that here in Puerto Rico, we are seeing that is currently getting worse in some areas, particularly in the east coast of Puerto Rico and some areas of the south coast of Puerto Rico.
Only recreational fishermen said that it was beneficial to them because it attracts small fish, and bigger fish like mahi-mahi, well, are attracted to them. So that's where you can find them easily.
But for underwater fishermen, sargassum is a great problem because it affects their visibility in a great way.
Looks like Cynthia has a question.
Hi, well, thank you everyone for presenting. My question is for Rafael and Camila. I guess I'm wondering if you saw more success in the fishermen that decided to fish together, whereas the others fished on their own.
I think that's a great question. It's kind of tricky, let me say you, because most of the fishermen go to fish alone, but some of them resulted the, the sense of community between them. Because in one of the particular communities that we interview, the fisherman resulted the fact that if I don't have a boat, I go to ex-fisherman boat and he get me to the water. It's mostly the resilience aspect behind it. But in the normal basis, they go to fish mostly alone or in pairs. But in the kind of your kind of question, we can at least I can answer it because we weren't measuring the kind of success if they were fishing alone or fishing in groups. I think that's some of the things we are gonna see in the long-term analysis.
Yes, but you can also see it in the quality of their fisheries. One doesn't have any organization, and the other is like really structured. So the sense of community has helped them develop that.
And also in the answer of the fishermen of the different communities, you can see that in one they are mostly, as Camila say, one man method, but in the other community they are literally a family. It doesn't matter if it is blood relative, political relative, they are a family. And I think that after the last years of impact that they have been having, particularly after the impact of Hurricane Maria, it has been that sense of community, the thing that has helped them to stay together and move forward and overcome the different I forget the word, I'm sorry.
Adversities.
The different adversities that they have seen.
Clearly, you're a team that's worked on this together to know what the word is someone else is thinking. That's really nice, how well you wove things together. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your thoughts. We're going to come back with more questions in just a little bit, but we're lucky to have another presentation from Hunter. You're up next. If you'd like to share your screen.
Yeah, sorry about that. Just give me a second to figure this out. Okay, see here. Can you see this or yeah?
Looks perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. All right, so hello. My name is Hunter Goldman, and I am working with the Wisconsin Sea Grant this summer. My mentor is Sharon Moen, and yeah. All right, here we go. So, okay, so to introduce you a little bit to the program that I'm working with, as well as what I worked on. I worked with Wisconsin Sea Grant, and one of the main missions it has is to foster the livelihoods of Wisconsin's commercial fishers and fish farmers through research, trainings, and opportunities to share products with wider audiences. And I really wanted to focus on this in particular because I definitely cater to the water audiences. Like, one of the things that I had to do was live streams through Facebook Live. Essentially every week I focused on a different type of recipe for sauces that could go on fish. And through this Facebook Live, I catered directly to people virtually who were interested in sustainability and how to make food and sauces relatively easily. So there's that. And then anyhow, I also tried to introduce consumers to sustainable local fish, and I really did this through a map. I actually have a picture of it on a slide in the future, but basically I used ArcMap. I used ArcMap Online to make a selectable layer map. So people were able to find different kinds of fish based on what they wanted. So like there's a layer for producers, or a layer for fishers, for research facilities, for farmers. So like depending on what each person wants, there's these selectable layers that you're able to choose. And yeah, so that's that. And then this is what the map looks like currently. I'm still working a little bit on making the points on it a little bit more accessible for people who are colorblind. But basically, as you can see in the side, those are the layers that you're able to choose from: the fishers, farmers markets, processors, etc. And they're color coded. Unfortunately, I didn't have the legend on the screen yet. The map isn't totally finished, but anyhow, that's what we've got going so far for the map. And yeah, so there's that. And then one of the things that I wanted to talk about as well was local communities and how my research focused on that. So something I learned is that no two communities are alike. One of the things that I had to think about in making this map is that people are going to need different things based on where they live. So resources in, say, Milwaukee are going to be different than those in Green Bay. And I needed to keep that in mind as I was putting this map together. And in some communities, it's unfortunately a little bit more difficult to get fresh, sustainable fish at an affordable price, like in food deserts. So that was something else that is applicable to local communities and community to community basis, how it's different in those areas. And then I definitely tried to make sure that, yeah, there is a way for food to be more affordable and sustainable and delicious. Like that was really the main thing that I had to do in my Facebook Live messages, to make it obvious that you can definitely try to get fish locally, sustainably, and make it in an easy, delicious way. Except I focused on sauces. So there's that. And then my aha moment was really like how it's how it might impact my future career. So like I want to be an urban planner in the future. And before this, I really wanted to focus on ecotourism and coastal resilience. But, you know, through this internship, like I was able to see the connections between local fisheries and how they foster community and support these local communities and urban areas. And I mean, it would be amazing if I were able to like implement this into my future career, because I hope to work in communities that are coastal. And this is going to be an element that I need to know about. So, I mean, learning and knowing more about this, like it's invaluable for me. So moving on from that, in the future, I will be finishing up the map. And then I also am working on a story map to show the distribution of fish around the world. So the person that I'm focusing on really sources his fish from Lake Superior. And then I'm mapping out like, okay, so it goes from Lake Superior all the way to his processing plant, to New York, to Europe, to all these places around the world. So I'm showing that, yeah, this fish is caught globally and you can get it globally, but the fish market, it's a global product. And it's amazing to see the connections between how you catch it locally, and how the end product can be in like Finland. So I really wanted to map and make a easy visual representation of how this sort of thing happens. So yeah, that's what I have. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing about your work, and appreciate you sharing your progress of where you're at, and that you have some things you're still working on and the questions that came to you. Is there anyone that has questions for Hunter?
I do, and I don't know if this is something that you addressed a lot or focused on, but did you find that there were already a lot of existing, I guess, partnerships or relationships between like maybe those selling or the restaurants and those providers? Like, did that already exist, or did you see that there was a disconnect? What did you find any patterns at all?
Yeah, I mean, so for the person that I'm working on, for the story map, I learned about how he partners with a lot of local fishers that I had already put on the map beforehand. So it was really interesting to see how he made these connections with local fisheries that I'd already known about, and how they made these connections and these business relations. So it was really cool to see that sort of connection that was already there. So yeah, there's that. And then, I mean, that's all that comes to mind at the moment, but there is definitely a connection between things.
Thank you. It's kind of interesting to think about, you know, what is that networking? How do those relationships happen and interactions happen? In doing your messaging on Facebook, did you have an idea of who your target audience would be? Who did you want to hear your messages?
I mean, the person that I was targeting it to was really just the average consumer, somebody who wants to find fish sustainably and locally and can make sauces and dishes easily. So just the average consumer. It can be targeted to anybody who wants to cook, really. And I did talk about a lot of different academic subjects. Like I talked about sustainable fisheries in some. I talked about terroir and regional dishes. So there's a lot of different academic subjects that I tried to talk about as well. So it's informational for both those who want to cook and know more about the regionalness of the food, as well as people who are just interested in the subject. So.
Thank you. Do we have questions for Hunter or for any of our other presenters as well? We have a few minutes, and again, I'm sorry to be that repetitive reminder, but if you can fill out any comments on the on the Qualtrics, that's super helpful for people to be able to look at and reflect back. That constructive criticism as we all get more comfortable in doing presentations.
I have, before I forget, I have a follow-up question for Camila and Rafael, but then also for Hunter. Hunter, I think it's easier if we come back to you because it's an easy, I think, question of why the focus on sauces was for you. But so if we can come back to that one. But for Rafael and Camila, when you were speaking to the different fishermen or anglers in the area, did they come up with the problems? Were they the ones that brought up sargassum and the runoff after the prolonged rains, or were those examples that you provided to them to say, are these contributing to, you know, your results in terms of your catch and the species that you're catching?
We provided the examples and they told us if it has affected their fishing grounds and if they have to stop fishing because of it and for how many days or months. For example, hurricanes, most of them spent like from 3 to 2 months without fishing. And for sargassum, it's from 1 to 2 days until it clears out.
I want to add that we wanted to measure certain effects of the global warming that are most applicable here in Puerto Rico, because not all the effects of global warming are applicable here in Puerto Rico. So we wanted to get the effects that impact them most directly. So also we wanted to study the knowledge that they have about the global warming, their perceptions, because it's very interesting that fishermen of same fisheries have different perceptions about global warming, about the effects, and that was the purpose about doing certain effects of global warming and measuring what, asking them what is for them the global warming, if they can explain it, because in the long term we want to analyze that and study more the knowledge and how we can help these communities in an educative way so they can overcome and identify the effects of global warming. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. I was just curious of whether it was, you answered it, but whether it was something that you presented, like these are some of the examples, are they contributing, and whether they knew about it, or whether it was something that they themselves provided and said, this is what's causing it. So thank you for answering that. And then Hunter, if you could explain why your focus was on sauces.
Yeah, so I'm vegetarian. That's why I focused on sauces. I would have cooked fish, but both me and my mom are vegetarian, and that would have really not gone well. So that's why I focused on the sauces. And I had a lot of fun with it. Like I even made a little parody of fish. Like I cut tofu slabs in the shape of fish. In some of the videos, I made tofish. So like, yeah, I had a variation of fish in some things. So yeah.
Good strategy for finding a solution. Thank you. Are there any interns with us today that didn't have a presentation listed but would like to share about their work and to take a minute to share an update with all of us? I'll let you think on it for a minute. And if something comes to mind, this is to our presenters today, but also to all of you out there as interns. How did you find you had to adapt what you had intended because of COVID, because of the pandemic? You know, I know oftentimes, for example, it's tough getting fishermen to speak to you, but clearly you were able to interview them and talk to them, and they didn't worry about telling you their secrets. But how did you all be able to approach and adjust what you were doing, or Daniella, with dealing with the pandemic and dealing with your research questions?
For me, I think it was difficult because usually when I would do beach cleanups, it's a lot easier to get a lot more data collection when it's as a group. And I used to do it a lot with my organization from campus. And we used to go out and get a lot of data collection, but I couldn't do that because of COVID. So I had to individually go out and go out at different times. And since I'm probably like an hour away from the beach, it was a little bit more difficult to do that. Because I didn't get as much data as I would as if I was going as like in a group, but it still worked out really nicely. And I just made sure I, followed the guidelines and wore masks and gloves and stayed safe.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I think in our case, we have been working most of the internship in virtually because here in Puerto Rico, the COVID has been kind of weird, let me say, because it is like a strange wave of contagions. And when we did the interviews, thankfully, the positivity rate was very low. When we were vaccinated, the fishermen were very calm in respect to the COVID because either they have been vaccinated or they have their own philosophies. So to get them to talk to us wasn't very difficult. Yes, there were some fishermen that talk more than others, but I think that we follow the basic measures against COVID. So I think the most difficult part was sometimes the communication because it was online everything. So, but after we did the interviews and we did the most presential stuff, it has been, I think, although very easy to continue because we have passed the limited right now. So
I want to add that in an anthropology class, I learned that food brings people together. And something that helped us was that we had food for the fishermen that were willing to participate. So yeah, that brought them by curiosity and eased things up.
It's one of the best strategies there is in trying to get
And
people to
also,
come together.
after the interview, we gave them a souvenir that is a kind of pamphlet with every species of fish that is in the area for them. So they were delighted with the pamphlet. We were also giving posters with different fish. So they were very happy.
It was well worth their time with you.
Forgive me, I couldn't hear the question very well.
Oh, I'm just saying it was very well worth their time. They got rewarded very well for the time that they spent with you. They're
Yes,
probably
yes.
wondering when are you going to come back. That's nice. Other questions or suggestions or work that you've done? I'm curious. I always, it's nice that we're spread out throughout the US in different effects, in other areas, and different people have different impacts, but they all overlap. I mean, the issues you bring up about fisheries, the issues about getting people to eat fish and local fish, those are all things that are really valuable to be able to hear about and to learn about. Marine debris, I wish I could say it's localized, but no, it's an issue that's everywhere. Understanding the natural history of fish is another one that has a big effect for all of us. Those are wonderful presentations. Thank you so much for the time that you've shared with all of us, and thank you for doing your internships, and for also thank you to the mentors and to the supervisors and everyone who's part of this. You can go back to the main session right now if you want, or you can go into one of the other rooms to listen as they debrief at the very end. It's up to you. Don't disappear though. Please make sure, I don't want to lose you, or we can keep chatting if there's anything anyone wants to talk more about. Anything you didn't get to share, since we have a few minutes, but if you leave, it's okay too.
I want to ask Daniela real quick, were there children involved in the cleaning of the beaches?
Yeah, so we were out there also with Surfrider Foundation, and so they get everybody's attention in the community. So families come out, and there were children out there, and they were with little gloves, and they were picking up trash, and they would usually get, like the small little pieces in the sand. They would sit down and they would like scavenger in the sand and get like the microplastics in there, and the broken down pieces. And it was great to see, because all these little kids would ask so many questions, and it's just teaching them young, to keep the beaches clean and to pay attention to issues like pollution and things like that. It was really cool to see. I really enjoyed that.
Is that something that any of you have been involved in beach cleanups in your areas? To me, it's very exciting to hear you've got kids looking for microplastics, because so often it's the big piece. It's something that I can hold in my hand and you quickly walk past anything that's small. And it's interesting, like with fisheries, if how that connects is thinking about the sargassum gets stuck in propellers. I wonder if there's any debris that's out there that also has an effect, either brought there by the rains or by getting caught in the sargassum.
It is.
Also. Okay.
It actually is. It gets attached because it creates a layer. And one of the things that affects the most is, for example, species like turtles, they can't come up for air. So they get stuck in it and eventually die.
Yeah, that's really sad. Hard to see.
I guess another, I'm interested in the runoff or the prolonged rains in Puerto Rico, because I mean you can't avoid a hurricane, right? I mean that's on an island and it's in the zone, but for prolonged rains, are there any like watershed strategies or management to try and when it's not a hurricane, when it's just a regular rain, to prevent some of the runoff into the waters, Are you aware of any strategies that might be being implemented to prevent some of the runoff?
Well, it's not actually very well implemented, but I'm aware of professors like, I think it's Luis Pere Alegría, that's trying to create like public policies to prevent trash and everything from going into the ocean, and like tramps to filter, but it's not done yet. We are very far behind in that.
It's hard to have the ideas, but the slow on the implementation. Yeah, that's very hard.
Especially when you have so many recovery efforts after hurricanes, it's priority of getting water to people versus, like keeping trash out of the ocean. So
right now in Puerto Rico, we have a huge case about a pool that it's being built in coast area, and there are really big protests about it. I don't know if you had the chance to see it, because the government isn't like really supporting environmental laws. So they're building a pool like really close to the ocean.
That's so hard.
It's really hard to see that the government didn't learn the lesson after Hurricane Maria, because they have authorized construction in areas that are clearly inundable, that in areas that coastal erosion is doing very bad impact. So right now that the protest that Camila is mentioning is because also they are destroying the habitat of one of the national turtles here. So right now it's kind of sad, because after Hurricane Maria, I thought that we could have a discussion about how we could do better to our natural resources, because also the trash in the rivers was a big problem after the hurricane that extended for years. I am from the rural area, and you can see pieces of zinc in the river from 3-4 years that people hasn't recovered. So it's really frustrating to see that that it has been a failed in the implementation of public policy in favor of our natural resources. And sadly, with the next hurricane, the next storm, it doesn't need to be a hurricane. There are a lot of places that are in a lot of danger. So right now here, I think that the protests are important because they are giving a discussion to natural resources, the impact of global warming, and how as a society we could do better.
Really valuable to have opportunities for people to speak up and to not accept policy that's damaging, and not looking at building resilience for the long run or even the short term, it sounds like. And it's true, those lessons. I think it ties in with a lot of what everyone's talked about with Rex, with the creating those fish lifts and making sure that the habitat is successful, and as we modify, how do we do it in a way that is going to really ensure species besides humans survive, or besides somebody's economics survives.
Yeah, I was gonna say my project in terms of the beach cleanups and the pollution we were talking about. So I spent a lot of time on the banks of the river with my antenna and my receiver unit tracking these fish. And I was super surprised at all the trash I saw and everything. And I think just like a lot of the people just aren't as informed and don't have as great an understanding of how special the Penobscot River really is. It is one of the last Atlantic salmon rivers in the United States of America. And like other than Atlantic salmon, if you don't like Atlantic salmon, there's plenty of other creatures and birds and everything that really make it just a wonderful river and supports some wonderful wildlife. So anyway, I could definitely relate with that.
Sounds like you're a pretty amazing steward for the river, and I think, I think about it as people are out looking at and seeing what you're doing, hopefully asking questions. so that you can talk about how
Oh
important.
yeah, I have a great memory of so we were tagging the fish and releasing them, and we were on the riverbank, and some guy came down in his ATV and had no clue that sea lamprey were in the river, but he wanted a picture with them. So we, set him up and got him a picture of it, and then he ran off and told all his friends about it, and it was amazing. He was so happy and so excited to learn about it. So yeah.
There's community engagement right there. Very direct.
Yeah, really true. Way of getting more people involved. And hopefully all of you will be able to see the effects of the work that you've done. And I'm supposed to make sure you all get back to the main session now. Thank you so much for your time with all of us. And thank you for sharing one of the products of the internship. That's terrific. Appreciate that. I'll see you back in the main session if you just click on leave room. That should get you back to the main room. Don't leave the meeting, just the room.
Done. So he's just waiting to get pulled back. I just left on my own.
Sounds good. I can do that for David. That was breakout room number 2.
Correct. We're finished.
Hey, I think we're good to go, Sam.
Well, on behalf of Jane and I, thank you all for coming. We were so excited to be able to help coordinate this and get everyone from all across the different Sea Grant programs together to hear about the great work the interns have been doing this summer. There are a couple ways that we were chatting about kind of showcasing everything that they've done. In addition to today's presentations, many of you know that there have been a lot of tweets happening over the last 36 hours or so related to the interns' works, kind of showcasing some of the stuff they're doing. We really want to see that continue. As Jane continues with closing remarks, what I'm going to do on my end is I'm sharing a few of these right now. We welcome all of the mentors, but also the interns to go onto Twitter, to go on any other social media platforms and share your experience. Share it with your family, your friends, share it with others, and really inspire the next generation of Sea Grant interns that'll come after you, in terms of letting them know that these opportunities exist and letting them know the type of experience that you had this summer and what you took away from it. So as we scroll through these, please capture, add, like, and retweet as you want and help us get the word out for this great program.
You can say a couple of these out loud, Sam. you want me to read them?
Yes, please.
Okay, from USC Sea Grant, shout out to our intern, Daniella Loera, who is completing the Sea Grant Community Engaged Internship this summer. Daniella is working with Surfrider to inform policy and engage communities about their influence on beaches through beach cleanups. Awesome. Thanks, Daniella. Ooh, Eat Wisconsin Fish. This is one of my favorite programs as I once worked on it. Shout out to Hunter Goldman, our creative Wisconsin Sea Grant intern. We're grateful for the cooking demos viewed by 600 plus people, maps, and intrepid spirit. I would suggest reading this article. I read it, and the funny thing is he's a vegetarian and he still figured out ways to promote Wisconsin seafood. Coming from MSU Aquatic Animal Health Lab, they're very proud of Michigan Sea Grant intern and MSU student, Rachel London, as she works to uncover the causes of skin lesions in Michigan smallmouth bass in collaboration with the DNR Fisheries this summer. A great member of the team, and I agree. I got to see her presentation in Breakout Room 4. Very cool stuff. And if you check out National Sea Grant's Twitter, NOAA Sea Grant, they even mentioned the Community Engaged Internship Program, how it provides training and mentorship to the next generation of scientists and decision makers, and how this summer undergraduate students worked with Sea Grant programs on place-based research, outreach, education, and communication projects. So I won't read any others, but please do look for yourself. There are tweets about many of you out there. And how much, what a role that you all played across the country in our Sea Grant network. And so all I've got to add, Sam, is a goodbye song. So I'm going to play this song, but I wanted to know, does anyone else want to add anything either in the chat or out loud? Any of our breakout facilitators, perhaps, just what you experienced today or with this summer.
I guess I'll jump in if it's okay. This was my first time being a mentor with Michigan Sea Grant and the CEI, and I'll just echo that. I'm so impressed with all the students, and this was really awesome serving as a mentor, and I'm so super proud of Rachel, but also, you all have done a great job. I think these have opened up so many awesome opportunities for students. So thank you all for doing this. It's awesome.
Thanks, Thomas, for being a mentor. We appreciate it. Okay, without further ado, we're all saying goodbye. Keep up the great work. Keep up your STEM, science, communication, research careers, and do stay in touch.
Congratulations, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Inside my bones, it goes electric wavy when I turn it on. Off from my city, off from my home. We're flying up no ceiling when we in our zone. I got that sunshine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet. I feel that hot blood in my body when it drops. I can't take my eyes off it, moving so phenomenally. More like the way we rock it, so don't stop. It's under the lights when everything goes. Nowhere to hide when I'm getting you close. When we move, well, you already know. So just to let you. I can see but you when you dance. It's creeping up on you, so just dance. All those things I shouldn't do, but you dance. There ain't nobody leaving, so keep dancing. I guess I'm so just dance. So just dance. Ooh, it's something magical. It's in the air, it's in my blood, it's rushing on. rocket. Got that good soul in my feet. I feel that hot blood in my body when it drops. Ooh, I can't take my eyes off it. Moving so phenomenally. No more like the way we rock it. So don't stop, stop, stop. Under the lights when everything goes. Nowhere to hide when I'm getting you close. When we move, well, you already know. It's just a nothing I can see but you when you dance, dance, dance. Feel a good, good creeping up on you, so just dance, dance, dance. Come on, all those things I shouldn't do, but you dance, dance, dance. And ain't nobody leaving, so keep dancing. Can't stop the feeling, so just dance, dance, dance. So just dance, dance, dance.
All right, that's all she wrote. Sam, anything else on your end for a recording?
No, other than just, as Jane said, stay in touch. If you haven't realized it for the interns at this point, Sea Grant community is small. We're here and we're very supportive. So please stay in touch, reach out to us. Let us know, even if it's not the Sea Grant program that you worked with this summer, if there is something that you need or are interested in that any of us are doing, don't hesitate to contact us. Look forward to talking to you all soon.
Bye.